Welcome to the Intimate Partner Violence video series. This week's video is on grief and the stages of healing. If you feel triggered by any of the information, please take a break, do some self-care, reach out for support from a friend or a family member. You can phone our office, or if you're in crisis, please call Mobile Crisis. There are also resources that go along with this video, and you can find them on our website and work through them at your own pace. So let's start by talking about intimate partner violence and this idea called disenfranchised grief. So grief in general is usually associated with like the loss of a loved one. So a parent passes away, or a pet, something like that. And people tend to really understand that kind of grief, and you get a lot of support and understanding. When it comes to intimate partner violence, however, because the relationship had abuse and violence, people don't always tend to understand why there might be grief and sadness after losing the relationship or leaving an unhealthy partner. And this leads to feeling misunderstood and invalidated, and not a lot of people kind of rallying around you to support you. Often when people have left an abusive relationship, or when an abusive relationship have broken down, rather than hearing supportive messages, they hear things like, well, why are you sad? You should be happy. He did you a favor. It's great that she left. It's not accepted in the same way. This is really unfortunate because there are a lot of losses that happen even after a violent relationship ends. You lose the family that you built, the routine that you had, the home that you lived in, the hopes and dreams you had for your future, the partner that you were supposed to have, financial security. You lose all of the good times. Your sense of self is often lost, and you lose time with your children if there's children in the relationship, and now you have to share that. And so many, many losses, and this is only a few. And so, there is a level of grief, even if the relationship had some violence to it when it's over. And so there's stages of grief and healing that people tend to go through. The first stage is shock and denial. So, kind of a disbelief that this has happened, that it's broken down, not really being sure of what really just happened. Did we really just break up? Was it really that bad? There might be some anger. And anger can be a motivator. It can help us to kind of propel ourselves forward and keep working if we can use it in a healthy way. You may experience some depression and detachment, so feeling very sad and isolating yourself and not talking to very many people. You might reach a level of acceptance of just, this is the reality now, this is where we're at, and I can deal with this. There can be dialogue and bargaining. So, sometimes that's dialogue and bargaining with yourself, with your higher power. Sometimes it goes as far as trying to bargain and have dialogue with your partner. And then a return to a sense of balance and well-being. So at some point through these phases, through this process, there is a sense of, I'm okay now, things are okay, this is normal, I can deal with this. And it's super, super important to remember that grief is messy, and humans are messy, and there is no right way to grieve. So you might skip steps, you might move through them in a different order, you might revisit them more than once. You might not go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, done. It might be 1, 5, 2, 5, 1, all over the place. And it's also really normal to kind of go through the phases, get to a sense of balance and well-being. And then as time passes and you go through different stages in your life and new memories or information are discovered, you might go through the phases again because you're grieving new things, you have new information. So let's talk about some tips for getting through your grief. The very most important thing is to feel your feelings. So if you're sad, let yourself feel sad. If you're angry, let yourself feel angry. If you're relieved, feel relief. Talk about how you feel. If you don't have friends and family members that you feel comfortable talking to, you can talk to a professional, but talk about how you feel. Make moving on the end goal. So the end goal is not to try and understand the other person and change them. It's not to try and get back to what was. It's about moving on, moving forward. Remind yourself that you still have a future. Even if it's not the future you planned, even if it's not the future it was supposed to be, you are still there. You can make a future. You can be happy in that future. And it's important to know when grief has become depression. And so when the sadness feels so overwhelming and it's not going away, when you're tired, when you're really isolating, if you're starting to have like suicidal ideation, those are times where you need to reach out to a professional and get some help to move through it, because sometimes grief can just become too big, become depression, and then it's hard to get out of. So it's important to reach out, spend time with people who support, value, and energize you. Get outside help if you need it, and start building new friendships too with healthy people. It's really important to include self-care when you're going through grief. So making time each day to nurture yourself, and that can be as simple as making sure you slept, you ate, you showered, you drank enough water, basic needs. Pay attention to what you need. Stick to a routine. Our brains do better when we feel safe and secure and we know what to expect. Take a time out if you need to. Avoid unhealthy coping behaviors. And often hear people think of like drugs and alcohol, and that's yes. Also, an unhealthy coping behavior is really anything that's getting in the way of you living a healthy, safe, happy life. And so sometimes exercise can become an unhealthy coping behavior if we're doing it, 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, or, eating can become an unhealthy coping behavior. And so just kind of keeping an eye on, is it getting in the way? And explore new interests. Start to maybe do some self-discovery and figure out what kinds of things you like. And if you need more support or information, if you're feeling grief, if you're going through this and you just would like to talk about it, or if you want information about other topics, you can contact our office at 306-244-0127. Thank you for joining me for this video. Take care.